the more and more I get into production and this type of music, it's all sound design, Are your sounds super crisp and clean, and do they stand out, and are they interesting, and do they complement one another and work well together? And so, when I wasn't as good at designing sounds, it was search through presets until I find sounds that intrigue me, and then maybe try to tweak them to something that's exactly what I like. Or now that I've gotten more familiar with sound design, it's more of that process.
You're listening to the Freio
Music Podcast.
To the Freio Music
Podcast.
So my name is Matt Richter, and I make music under the moniker Mass Relay.
Wait, and Matt, when did you get into music? I like to ask artists, what is your first musical memory? Do you recall way back in the day anything that stuck out?
I mean, if you go back to being a listener, I was jumping around the living room at age 4 or 5 to Painted Black by Rolling Stones and, Iron Man by, Black Sabbath. So my dad was a guitar player and into rock and metal and whatnot. So he definitely got me into it early as a listener. And I started playing guitar when I was 9. So that's when I that sealed the deal for me. Honestly, I've known since I was 9 years old that wanted to be a guitarist when I grew up in some way, shape, or form.
That's awesome. Did your dad teach you?
He taught me some stuff for sure. We always gave my dad shit for playing the same 25 to 30 songs on repeat, kind of plateaued.
Yeah.
But he played those songs pretty damn good though, for sure. But yeah, he got us lessons. Me and my older brother is like 5 years older than me. And so he got us both into lessons. I was about 9. My brother was probably about 14 then.
Nice. And then did you and your brother just compete kind of and push each other a little further?
There was definitely some healthy competition there. Me and my brother were always very close. So, we never let it get too competitive, but we absolutely pushed each other to get better. He would play some crazy lick and I'd be like, damn, I got to get, better. And I'd play some crazy thing. And there was back and forth, that type of, we had the same guitar teacher too. And our guitar teacher, he would take he called it Guitar Fitness Month every year. He'd write down what beat per minute you could play this scale at.
Oh, wow.
And,
nice.
Keep records of all your shit. So you could literally see here's where I compare to my brother.
Oh, that's great. And did your brother start at a similar age to when you started?
We actually started at a similar time.
Okay.
So he was, 14 or so, and I was probably 9. So I got a younger start, but we started at the same time. And that was fun, having the same teacher. I mean, he was a huge influence on me for the type of music I was into. Metallica was my favorite band at 10 years old.
Nice. Well, that's really detailed. I don't hear that often about guitar teachers keeping kind of strict record of the tempo and how good you did it last week and can you one up yourself, or how fast you can play it.
This guy was a riot, man. He had a rubber band gun. And he would shoot your hand if you were playing with bad form. No.
That's funny.
He's a funny guy for sure. But yeah, he was a great teacher. He definitely, I'm from Elmhurst, Illinois, which is near Chicago. It's a suburb of Chicago. But the little guitar store in Villa Park, which is the town right over, it's called Perry's Music. They had so many good players there, man. Just crazy shredders, kind of these underground people that you would never hear about, but were very talented. So I was around a lot of those crazy people at a young age for sure.
Great. And
Yeah.
was it always fun as a kid when you're playing with that guitar teacher or your brother or your dad?
Yeah, I mean, I knew at a young age that it was, my thing. It's always been my favorite thing for sure. And then, now it's branched out into producing music and trying to learn all sorts of instruments, piano and saxophone. We can talk more about that later, but guitar, I knew from an early age, like I just fucking love playing guitar for sure.
Nice.
And being into Metallica and metal bands like that, they're very guitar centered.
For sure. For sure. And did you just have a vision of yourself like, yeah, I'm going to be Metallica one day?
Dude, yeah. I actually have from third grade. So probably when I must have just started playing, but I have we had to do a biography, each grade going from when we were born to being 8 or 9 at the time. And I have the final page is the future. And I literally drew myself playing a guitar. I wrote that I wanted to be the guitarist of a famous rock band.
Nice.
So still going for it. My mom's probably get a real job. No, I'm kidding. My mom is actually extremely supportive and always has been.
That's great. But that's
man.
Cool that you kind of knew it early on. My dream was a professional soccer player at one point.
Really?
Yeah, I stopped soccer 4th grade. So that's awesome. But that's cool that you had such a clear vision at a young age and you've pursued it this whole path. So that's great.
Yeah, I've always felt very blessed for that, man. I knew, like I said, from a young age what I wanted to do. So that at least made it kind of easier figure out a direction to move in,
Less choices to make.
Yeah, exactly. I forget. I think it's the singer of the Smashing Pumpkins says, getting older is just lost potential, or, you only have the potential to be less things as you get older. You get more and more focused.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, after you picked up the guitar, were there any big turning points musically that kind of shifted your focus or renewed your energy or helped you bring yourself to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly, I'm kind of how could you call it? Kind of a slut for being oh, this changed my life, but I definitely have a lot of moments that did change my life for sure. I was in a metal band since I was in 5th grade, rocking out, playing Metallica songs and whatnot at a really young age, but that never really fully took off, So when I was 17 or 18, I knew I had to go to college. And so I was all right, well, may as well try to go for music. I know I love music and I've always been pretty good at it. And so I decided I would try that. And I guess getting into music school at Elmhurst College, that's where I started going to music school, started down the academic path, so to speak. But yeah, that was definitely a confidence booster, where I knew I was headed in the right direction. I didn't know how to read music when I started at college. So I was always the person that was a little behind at first, I felt like. But I knew that if I kind of focused, I always ended up being one of the better people, either whether it was in my guitar programs or, music theory class. And eventually, I did start to get it, now, reading music and music theory, these things have become part of me, and it's just a language I know. But at the time, I was definitely intimidated by someone. You realize that talent is kind of a dime a dozen, So that was one big one for sure, getting into Elmhurst College.
That's great.
Yeah, there was some subsequent ones for sure, but that was a big one to start.
So talk to me a little bit about that mindset when you got in and you're like, oh shit, everybody else knows how to read music and I don't. Did you get down on yourself or did you double down in the sense no, I got this. I'm going to stay up all night tonight and learn this.
It's a little bit of both, man. Have you seen that movie Whiplash by chance?
No, you got some good ones.
I don't know how many movies you watch. I'm a movie person for sure. But it's a music movie. It's based around going to music school. Okay. And they tell a story that is a true story in the movie about Charlie Parker. He was a famous.
Oh, is that the drummer movie?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I did see it. I just forgot the name.
Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that movie was really good. But if you recall, they tell the story about Charlie Parker, like getting the jazz cymbal thrown at him.
Yep.
So there was a little bit of that, man. Like I remember being around all the people that could read their parts in a guitar ensemble and not being able to read my part. And my teacher literally like stopping and looking at me and being like, "We got a problem, Matt." And like calling me out in front of everyone. And I was like, I never want to feel that way again, you know? So I practiced my ass off and it worked, you know? But it's interesting how it's a balance between like, in a way it's mental abuse, but it's like mental abuse that kind of puts you in your place. And, you know, there can be positive kind of little ass kicking like that, you know?
He did throw a cymbal, hopefully.
He did not throw a cymbal, exactly. It was kind of just letting me know, you know, hey, you got to get your shit together. Otherwise, you're not going to be cutting it. And so that was a learning experience for sure.
That's great. Yeah, I had
absolutely.
something similar happen to me. I took a African drumming class in college,
Nice.
and we were doing triplets, and I just couldn't wrap my mind around it because all throughout high school I was playing in fours, and I couldn't get my mind around threes. And the whole class is drumming. I'm sitting there trying my hardest. I know it's not sounding right, and the teacher just stop you, and he just like points at me. And it's like, oh shit. He's like, all right, do it. And I was like, I know it's not right. You know, I hear it. I've got a good enough ear that I know it's not right, but I don't physically know how to do this. And he walked around behind me, grabbed my wrists, and played the drums with my hands. And it was like, boom, that's when it happened. It was like muscle memory. I got it from then on. And it was just, it was pretty cool.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I have a drummer friend, and it's funny. It's kind of a similar story. He was talking about playing 3/2, which is kind of a beat like this.
Oh, wait, you cut out, but I heard it at the beginning.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if even if anyone listening would be able to hear, but if they can't, it's 3 beats over 2, which kind of sounds like this. And so the drum teacher would say, "It's not that hard. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. It's not that hard."
Nice.
Yeah. Some of these, you know, some things stick with us when people are trying to teach us something, you know?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because there's maybe it was a physical block, not even mental, because I could wrap my head around the sound, but I couldn't physically make it. Oh,
absolutely, man. I could totally relate, you know, especially like I know about music. I've had musical training, but someone trying to show me a drum beat or trying to learn the saxophone, you know, an instrument that I'm just not yet familiar with. There's the learning curve of having to get over that physical barrier. Like you said, like I get it, but I can't translate getting it into doing it.
Yeah, that's great. So after that first, you know, calling you out for was it sight reading at that experience?
Yeah, pretty much. Or maybe having already had the part for a week and should have practiced it, but I didn't practice it.
I see. Nice.
But there were moments of sight reading as well.
What about after college? Was there any major breakthroughs or forks in the road for you?
Yeah, you know, so continuing down my like academic path, actually, I got done with Elmhurst College, and you know, it was kind of the same thing. I was like, I knew I wanted to continue down music, and grad school actually seemed like a viable option for classical guitar. So that's what I ended up doing. I applied to a number of schools, but I got into the University of Denver for grad school for classical guitar performance. And I knew, like, it's funny, man, like, I was so excited to get into grad school for classical guitar, but deep down, I always knew that this was my path to Colorado to get into electronic music because I've always loved electronic music so much. And when I got into school in Colorado, I knew I had to take the opportunity, or otherwise I would always regret it, you know? So like I had a girlfriend at the time, did not work out with her, you know, kept down the path. And I did a 2-year program here, studying with Ricardo Isneola, who for classical guitar is like a badass. And so that was another huge turning point. You know, I got into school in Colorado. I had a path out here. And I I actually just the other day passed my 8-year mark. I've lived here for 8 years, and it was by far the best decision I've ever made, man. So, I mean, Denver, just the lifestyle and the people out here, compared to Chicago. I love Chicago, but people are just, they move very fast there. They're kind of mean in general. And I love my family and friends in Chicago. I love all of them very much, and they're great people. But just, again, being out here it makes me happier. It brings me a lot of joy being around the mountains. So yeah, man, just like getting into school here and having a path out here, and then slowly just kind of wiggling my way into the music scene and trying to meet more people and, figure out what it means to try to have a music career and to make money as a musician. It's all been a beautiful and awesome journey. I wouldn't trade it for anything. So yeah, that's been huge for sure.
That's great. So classical guitar to electronic music is not really an intuitive leap. So
no.
How did you start getting into the electronic scene? I guess the seed was already planted in your mind, but how did you make the transition?
Yeah, I had been as soon as I got into the electronic music scene, I went to Electric Forest and I was 21 and I was totally hooked. I was like, this is crazy. I can't believe this is a real thing, and the music was badass. I loved the music, being a musician. I'd never heard anything quite like it, And so I got into trying to make my own music probably around then when I was 21, always as a side thing because I was really busy with school and had a lot of work to do with school. And so I was always making songs on the side, and it was something I really enjoyed doing. And so as I went to grad school for classical guitar, it was 2015, winding down, doing my grad thesis, having to do my graduate recital and all this shit. And I entered a song into a competition called the UNS Challenge. The UNS is a blog that does electronic music. They do releases, but they also have a music festival now. But at the time, their big thing was the UNS Challenge, where if you won this challenge, you got to play at 9 music festivals. Electric Forest being one of them, Summer Camp, Sonic Bloom, some of the ones I had really loved. And so we entered this competition, and we got into the top 50. And basically from there, it's a voting thing. So, man, I knew it was sort of in my hands, and I messaged every person I've ever crossed paths with or knew or family member, anything I could think of, and it was a race the whole time between us and this artist Spundos. And we ended up winning the UNS Challenge, man. So I won the UNS Challenge right when I was graduating grad school. So again, just coming back to this, how do you get in from classical guitar to really diving into the electronic music world, And so that was my first electronic show ever, was Summer Camp Music Festival, having won this competition and having to fly home and, I said, play my recital and then play Electric Forest. So needless to say, it was a very strenuous summer on my mind, but a very rewarding experience to get to do all that. And again, this kind of learning how to get involved in the music scene, getting to see what a contract looks like and working with a stage manager and, working with managers beforehand, getting the whole spectrum of, being treated awesome at a music festival to showing up and then being wait, what? You won some competition? We don't even see your name on the lineup. So it was a lot of growing that summer.
Yeah, well, it sounds like exactly what you're saying. Just a period of massive growth. You got your first festivals. Yeah. Also, I want to just go back and reiterate that you got into the top tier with the music alone, but that didn't get you the winning slot. You had to put yourself out there and message all your high school, middle school, elementary school friends and say, vote for me, vote, share it with your friends. Was that nerve-wracking, putting yourself out there in social media?
It definitely was, man. To the point where I definitely got more love than hate by far. People really came through for me, and I am forever grateful for all of that. But definitely had a little bit of yo, leave me the fuck alone. I don't even know who you are. That was like the worst of it. I remember one guy said that. I was like, okay, I'll back off, you know? And, you know, maybe I think the one other person literally said, it was a girl, I won't forget it. She goes, you were kind of an asshole to me in high school. And I was like, oh my God, was I really? I can't believe that. I'm so sorry. And she's like, no, I'm just kidding. I really don't remember you that much, honestly. But she's like, yeah, I'll vote for you. So like an overwhelming response of love from people that were like, sure, I'll take a couple minutes and, you know, fill out this email response that I'll forever get spammed from to to help you out, you know. And honestly, it meant the world to me. We wouldn't have won without every single person coming through and helping out. And it was such a cool couple months, you know, the whole thing from that, from like reaching out to everyone and having everyone come through to actually winning and getting to go do all that. And, you know, kind of like the manifestation of everything that I thought would happen in my mind versus what it actually ended up being like. I mean, you know, I thought I'd be playing for crowds of 1,000 people, you know, whatever. And like we had a couple crowds that were pretty good, maybe a couple hundred people tops, but a lot of it was playing at 12 p.m. for 10 people and, you know, next to no one. But honestly, I met some people during those times that I'm forever friends with. So I wouldn't change any of it for the world. It was so awesome.
That's great. So
shout out to the Unts for that.
yeah, that's great. And what was it about Electric Forest? Because I went to it when it was called Rothbury.
Did you?
Which I think it's the same festival.
It is, yes. It's in the same spot. You know, they still have like it's in Rothbury still.
It's just a beautiful location in the forest. There's tons of stages, like hidden stages that you just stumble across in the middle of the night. But something magical about it. But what was it that spoke to you and kind of got you into the electric scene a little deeper?
You know, I don't know. Have you been to Burning Man or anything like that?
I have.
You have? Okay, so I have not been to Burning Man, but that's on like, I was supposed to go in 2020 and then COVID happened. You know, that's a big bucket list thing for me. But I imagine that a lot of the palpable energy at Burning Man and the connection between strangers, it's a lot of the same feelings that you're feeling at a festival like Electric Forest. At least when I first started going, you'll hear people say it's changed. And, you know, they started doing 2 weekends and it's owned by a bigger company, blah, blah, blah. But at the core of it is that the feeling of just pure immersement in the present moment. You know, you meet a person that you've never met before and they start telling you maybe about their life a little bit or where they're from or how they got there, where they're friends or how they're having such an amazing time. And you genuinely care, you know, you really, really care about that person and being in the moment. And I think any kind of event that can bring people that feeling is going to be something that many people cherish very deeply. And then they continue to try to harvest that feeling, you know? And so when at the peak of it, you know, that was something my friends that I'm like literally getting teared up thinking about it, dude. Like, I'm sorry, but like that was something me and my friends would look forward to for the entire year, you know? It was something that was very special to us. And we bonded a lot during those weekends. And so I think everyone is, like I said, kind of harvesting that feeling and sharing it with one another. And I think it's just truly, I mean, it's something that I've said a million times and had heard other friends say a million times, but it truly changed my life, man. I mean, to see, you know, it was one of a few moments where I decided this is what I was going to dedicate my entire life to, you know, is music and being part of that something very special.
Yeah, so, great. It's hard to put it into words what a festival like that can do and the people that it filters in and filters out, because it's a unique community, but it's so diverse at the same time. It's not homogenous, you know. That's a
good point, and it's funny you say filter in and filter out, because that's definitely something that's happened. I remember the pivotal moment when I got very immersed in this scene and how in love I fell with it, and how some of my other closest friends in the world that I still am very close friends with and I cherish very dearly, but maybe they just didn't get as into it as much, and they didn't like music festivals, or maybe they were turned off by some of the drug use that's very prevalent, which is totally understandable. The people need to obviously be very careful, and there's a lot of things that help that in the community, but that's neither here nor there. But regardless, I saw the kind of growth of people like, okay, I think this is where my life is going to go, and other people, I think this is where my life might go, and I don't think it's there, man. And it's totally cool with me. Again, people that I really love that are killing it, in their aspects of life that I'm not involved in.
Let's transition back to your production of music and how you started to formulate your sound and figure out what instruments belong, the experimentation that went into it. So what were some of the big breakthroughs, or as far as maybe making music live or recording music, that helped you formulate your sound?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's an interesting question. And it's honestly one that's been on my mind a lot the last year. So when I first started getting into electronic music, there's one of the best things I ever read as an early artist. My friend sent it to me, but it was, to paraphrase, along the lines of, when you get into art, don't judge yourself in the beginning too hard, because you're going to have high standards because you love art so much, and it's just not going to be there at first, And so I look back at some of my first, electronic dubstep songs, or whatever you want to call it. And I don't know if I still have some of them, man. They might have been lost in the ether, but they were dog shit. I mean, they were just terrible, And it's just this attempt at trying to break down that barrier between the technology that you're using and your inspiration, your creativity. And so at first, like I said, the songs were crappy, but I really always enjoyed the process. I enjoyed trying to learn Ableton, and that's the program. If anyone's not familiar, it's the program that I use to make music. It's called Ableton. It's a DAW, digital audio workstation. And so, learning Ableton was always just something I really enjoyed. And another friend that showed me a lot when I first started learning music, he said, you have to make every mistake twice. And it's really like every mistake like 15 times, before you start to figure it out deeply. But going along with that, there's also an interesting like virginness when you don't know what you're doing. You're kind of just throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks, And so some of my early songs that, they were released on like Adapted Records. I think they were released in 2015, right when we won that UNS challenge. Looking back now, I mean, there's so many problems with it. I'm like, this sounds like crap. The mix is bad, blah, blah, blah. But like the raw ideas are still cool, and I see that virginness when I listen to it. And so I definitely went through a period of like overthinking it and started to learn more about the program and being like, like, is this something people are going to like? And that's a huge mistake right away. If you start thinking in art what people are going to like and what they're going to care about, you're just going down the wrong direction then. And I did that for a minute. And like, I've honestly, within the last 2 years, like, have had this huge realization, like, that I need to pursue what I find interesting as an artist. And that's going to be the path to truly finding my own unique sound, circling back to that, and just being interested in finding fun ways to produce and ways that strike my ear, and coming back to that kind of virgin mentality of, man, does this sound cool? Now that I've been producing for longer, I have more tricks up my sleeve. I have more tools I can use to produce cool and interesting sounds. I got this Moog right here. It's a Moog Sub 37, but just using like real synthesizers as well as software synthesizers.
And when you say real, you mean analog, right?
Yes, that's the better way to put it. It's an analog synthesizer, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great. And so you started producing music for others, and then realized, wait a second, you're going to backtrack. You produce music for yourself, what you enjoy. What differences of the production were there when you were producing for others versus yourself? Like if you could generalize the sound.
It's well, okay. So as far as the actual sound difference, I would just say it's definitely more experimental what I'm doing. In that, I experiment with a lot more genres. And that's the thing. Like one of the coolest music analogies that's really been driving me as an artist is, again, I'm a jazz person. You know who John Coltrane is?
Oh yeah.
So Coltrane, he was notorious for he learned Latin music, he learned jazz, he learned blues, he learned gospel, he learned all these different genres and eventually just fused it into this unique thing that was John Coltrane. And that's been my honestly motivator for, like I said, the last few years is I have classical training and guitar, which is, it's like, how the hell is that going to get in there? But I've learned Spanish influence through that. I've learned jazz in school. I did a lot of jazz training. I've learned a lot about production. And in production, I've always been open-minded. I love trap. I love future bass. I love like hybrid soul. I love dubstep. I love like glitch hop or neuro bass. Drum and bass. I love it all, man, if it's done well. And so I try to just be open-minded now, and whatever I'm feeling at the time in the studio, just following that feeling. And it's just a lot more fun, first of all. I find it really enjoyable, but I think that's what's going to lead to me eventually, hopefully creating something dope that's unique, man. That's the goal, is I want to make something, I have so many talented friends that I hear that I think we all just need to take the next step and be willing to experiment and say, what am I going to do that's different, that's going to make me stand out? I feel like the artists that you see coming up, like E-Prom and G Jones, a lot of these guys are just people that have been willing to be experimental and find their sound, and it's paid off for them.
Yeah, well, speaking of experimentation or variation in sound, one of your releases, the Mass Relay down tempo mix, is, first of all, it's a 20-minute mix, and it's totally unlike other music that you put out. Is that a live performance?
It's not a live performance per se, but there's a lot more live instrumentation on it. So a bit there, there's some live improvisation on there and whatnot, but it's not recorded live from like a show,
okay,
from the soundboard or something like that.
So how were you able to make a 20-minute song? I mean, for lack of a better term, then, it's not quite a song. It's a piece of work.
Absolutely. It's kind of it's actually like 4 or 5 songs that are loosely connected, I guess. And so they're all in similar keys, or in a relative tempo to one another. And so basically, man, it was just an attempt to release something that was a preview of music to come. And so I'm actually really excited. I've been working on all those songs for God, I have to have put hundreds of hours into those songs since that. And people listening, when it finally comes out, they might not be able to tell the difference, but I certainly can. But I've been working on those songs. That's kind of like a mix to preview more like an EP to come. And so the next EP I'm going to release is going to be a down-tempo EP, which are those songs, but which have come a long way and changed a lot. I've recorded my drummer that I work with, did a bunch of live drum recordings with him. And so, again, kind of trying to do something different, more of a live feel, kind of almost bring you to like a futuristic jazz bar in outer space or something, That's kind of the vibe I get when I listen to it. And so, I'm excited to release that music. And honestly, that mix, it gets it gets our most plays out of our SoundCloud, I would say, out of like the songs that we've done recently. And so I feel like people like the down-tempo music. And I know I just said that I'm not making music for people, and now I'm contradicting myself by even saying anything about it. But
it's always interesting to see what the feedback is.
Well, it is, man, because again, it just is, path as an artist, you're always second guessing yourself. And I think it's just more confidence that whatever I'm doing, trying to just not focus on that and be myself and to experiment, that hopefully it's doing good is, I guess, what I'm getting at, that hopefully it's a positive thing.
Yeah. So just to riff off of something that you said, like second guessing yourself, how do you deal with that? Because I feel like that is such a troublesome state of mind for artists, and it's very common, I would imagine, to generalize, as if I could know the thoughts of other people's heads. Certainly rattling around in my head at times. But how do you deal with second guessing yourself or putting something out and knowing that, well, it's different, but let's see what happens?
Yeah, man, it's been a long journey for sure. Going back to, like I said, I've been in like a metal band since I was 9 or 10 years old. So putting myself out there has always been something that I felt like I have to do as an artist. I feel like that's the point, right? Like, I'm trying to play music to share it with the world because it brings me joy, and I hope to bring that joy to others in some level, And I've had every spectrum of emotion, between total nervousness before a concert where you feel like you're going to throw up and you're comparing yourself to the band that played before, or the vocalist that's coming before, the guitarist, whatever it might be, man. It's all ego. And it's been something that I've worked on a lot as an artist, is like working on, one, just being aware of your ego, and two, just not letting it control you. Because I've seen so many, every story you hear of like the artist that was on top of the world and had it all and was just manically depressed and, got into heroin and died, or whatever it is, And like I've seen from an early time, like the possible toxicity that it can lead to. Like, if we would do a release, I'd be checking SoundCloud every hour, trying to see how many plays it got, or, trying to see, pretty much that, how many plays it got on Spotify, how many likes we've gotten from a concert, afterwards. And I've just realized that it's like, if you don't accept where you are as an artist now and be happy with it, that it's just going to be this never-ending revolving door of feeling not good enough. And it's not just music, you hear this about professional athletes, and it's something that I've definitely put a lot of time in. I read a lot of books. The War of Art is always one I tell any artist should read if you haven't.
That Stephen Pressfield?
Stephen Pressfield, man,
Yep. Changed
changed my life. Again, I changed you, or you changed my life for, but it did, man. That book really helped me focus on what's important about being an artist. And it sounds like you're familiar with some of these things. How do you? You're putting yourself out there as a podcaster and, putting your image on the internet? How do you deal with some of these things as well, man?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I didn't expect the tables to be turned so quickly.
Well, I thought it would be good.
No. You get yourself off the hot seat. I get it. No. So it is interesting. I realize that well, first of all, you have to maybe do it for a different purpose. And it's not just purely ego driven. Like one of my goals for this podcast is to help other musicians. So I have no problem trying to help other musicians out. And, it's not that I'm trying to do something for you that you can't do for yourself. But A, I want to promote great music and great musicians. But B, I want to share the knowledge that you've gained and other people have gained with the next generation of musicians. So I see it as kind of building a collection of knowledge for the next generation of musicians. And I have no problem doing that. So if I focus on myself, then that's when the problems start to compound. And I'm like, oh shit, how many downloads did I get? Why is, blah, blah, blah. But as you're talking about social media, focusing on those numbers and being on social media and trying to put your self-worth to the numbers is not really healthy and not a good way to go. And I think you'll just get too wrapped up in it. And so I really don't spend much time on social media at all. So, post something and I don't like it, you'll know why, because I didn't even see it.
Well, that's good, man. And there we go. There's a positive aspect to me asking you the question is now you've given me some insight that I can go use, because you're right. One of the biggest things I think that podcasts have done for me, certainly, and I think for a large portion of the population, are provide, valuable insight and advice from some of the most intelligent people in the world. I mean, I get to listen to podcasts, whether it's Joe Rogan or Sam Harris or some people I like. But you're in a room with someone that's gone through some of the deepest of life's, tribulations that are available, and they just have so much wisdom and insight to offer. And for me, it's certainly, it's been such an invaluable resource, just helping me kind of mold my perspective and kind of how I view the world and how I'm going to go about living the world and what is valuable to me in my time. And one of those things is social media. It's such a balance as an artist trying to, play this balancing act between, I recognize these things can be a toxic element in my life, but I recognize that they're also a necessary and invaluable tool to help spread your music. And, coming back to what you said about doing it for a reason other than yourself, I think that's so crucial. Tony Robbins, I don't know if you're into him at all, man, but he talks about that all the time. If you have a reason, helping people is such a positive thing. It feels so good. And if that becomes your focus, helping people try to learn from other artists and try to spread good music, it makes the rest of the path become that much clearer, I find.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it sounds like we're taking in a lot of the same knowledge sources. So I appreciate this. The mindset is so crucial to anybody's success, no matter what you're doing. So if you're, catching that touchdown pass and your mind's wandering on what do I look like on the big screen, that's probably not going to help you. And
we all do it sometimes, right?
Totally.
Just being aware of yourself when you slip up and trying to, kind of backpedal before you act on that. That's what I've noticed, at least in the process of where I'm at in my life. I've become more and more cognizant of these things when they happen. That's the ego coming back, caring about what you just said, too much about what I'm going to wear before a show, or how I look in the photos, and just these little things that aren't the main. They're not the eye of the bullseye.
Yeah. Well said. There's a phrase that I like that discusses, a plane traveling across the country, and, planes are always drifting a little bit, and it's just about course correcting. So just 1 degree off, then you quickly course correct, 1 degree off, course correct. And as long as you're course correcting quick enough, then you'll get to your destination. But if you let yourself just drift off course, even if it's, ½ degree, 1 degree over enough distance, you're really far from where you intended to go.
Yeah, that really adds up over time.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's just an analogy that I like.
No, I love that, man. That's great.
So, what other books have impacted your life?
So the first one that comes to mind right away is called Mastery. It's by, of course, I'm going to forget the guy's name. Damn it.
It's all good.
Robert Greene. Robert Greene. And Mastery, it's basically a culmination of various stories of masters at different crafts that it elucidates what they've done in their lives that have brought them the mastery, you know? And so one example that I related with quite a bit because it's musical is Mozart. You know, people talk about this inherent genius that Mozart was born with and how he was just a musical prodigy, which in many ways he was. He definitely, there are people that are born with certain advantages, whether it be just natural intelligence or a natural gift for music or whatever it be. But they go on to talk about how Mozart was dragged away from the piano every night at the age of 4 or 5. He would play for 8 hours at a time, you know, just constant repetition, you know, coming back over and over to whatever the thing may be. And so, you know, other examples of the same thing, you know, maybe a boxer, I can't remember the name right off the top of my head, that wasn't the best and wasn't the biggest, but after training for, you know, day in, day out, becoming one of the best boxers in the Olympics. And you see this time and time again. And so the book is essentially getting to how mastering your time and your use of your time is one of the biggest assets that you have in your life, you know. And I see it happen right in front of my face. My roommates, I'm 31, and they're both the male roommates are 27-ish. I think one of them just turned 28. But neither of them started music until 3 years ago. I mean, they just started, no instruments, nothing. But they both have this killer mentality. You know, one of them was a state champion wrestler, and the other one is just a total badass. And they have this I'm going to work harder than you mentality, and their music has become so good. One of them is teaching music lessons for the company that I work for now. And he is getting nothing but amazing reviews from every student he teaches. And I guess, you know, I'm drifting, but coming back to the book Mastery, it changed my life because it made me realize that how much I could do, how much potential I have if I really start to focus my time. And don't get me wrong, I fuck around pretty hard, man. You know, I'm a partier and I like to go to music festivals and, you know, I do my thing sometimes. But every other waking moment of my life is, you know, trying to what is going to be the next course correction to, you know, come back to your idea that is going to help me with my main goal, which is to make a beautiful life out of art and music, you know? So yeah, Mastery has been a huge one for me.
What purchase for under $100 in the last year have you made, maybe since COVID, have you made that's most improved your life? Music related or non?
Ooh, this is an interesting one. Purchase under $100 that has changed my life. You know what? I'm just going to say the first one that comes to my head. I don't know if it's not that cool or maybe it's
good.
really not the best answer, but it's the first one that comes to my head. But I bought a kind of decorative like world map, and so I hung it right by my bed. And I've done a little traveling. The biggest trip I went on was to Nepal, and I did a trek in the Himalayas in Nepal, and it was a life-changing experience. You know, coming back to things changing my life, right? But you know, traveling opened my mind so much to, again, just the amount of diversity there is in the world and how much of a bubble I've lived in and how much of the world I would like to see before I die someday. And having this map by my bed every morning has definitely been a motivator to make decisions that are going to help facilitate that, you know? And so I have a friend that lives in Germany right now. He's doing like a 2-year bit with Aldi, the company. And, I would like to go live in Germany for like a month maybe and crash on his couch for a couple weeks and maybe still do some Zoom lessons from over there. And COVID's helped me realize I could be a little more mobile than I thought with teaching music lessons and Zoom and whatnot. And so, I think the world map has been a daily reminder that's been pretty integral to kind of keeping my mindset where I want it to be.
That's great. Well, I love that. That's a great answer.
Cool.
So I want to dive into a few songs, and then maybe we'll drift off, of course, and then we'll come back to a few songs.
Yeah, man.
So your most recent release, Discreet.
I say chillin' on the beat, not to be discreet. When you knock you off your feet, put you 6 feet deep. I'm on the flow, you already know. Getting this dough, dropping answers to the flow. We keep the bass low, keep it steady, poppin'.
Yes.
It's a collaboration, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So how did that come to be, and where did it start?
Yeah, man. So that's actually kind of a cool collaboration in the sense that it's representative of a huge turning point in my life. It's whatever, dude. I'm an open book, so I'll just tell you real quickly. But I got divorced, not last September, but the previous September. And so, it's all good in the sense that it was meant to be. Me and her are actually still cool. She's a great person, blah, blah, blah. But from that divorce, I moved into a house, which is where I live currently in North Glen. And my roommates, Austin and Tyler. Tyler goes by the artist name of LaFortune. And so the song is a collaboration with LaFortune. And so this song is like, we moved in together. And again, they were newer musicians. So at first I was being cocky and pretentious and like, I don't want to collaborate with them. No, I'm totally joking. We had fun from the start, but it was always like just fucking around, let's make a song and see where it goes type thing. But the song Discreet was the first song that Tyler and I made together where like I noticed he had been leveling up a lot as a producer and I had been as well. We both been grinding hard. And so we were like, yo, this one sounds pretty fire. We should actually release it. And so we got to release it through Mile High Sound Movement, who has done so much for me as a musician, a great record label. And, again, always as an artist, like this music's kind of experimental. So we're like, man, I wonder if he's going to like it. And everyone we've shown the song to seems to think it's, a pretty good song. And so, our manager, he's not our manager anymore, but Chris Bachman, great guy. He really liked the song and released it. And the rest is history, so to speak.
Nice.
We got us, the first song that came out of me and the roomies living together,
Yeah, that's great. Because I was going to ask about LaFortune because I was looking him up and that's the single track. So I was like, well, how'd you find this guy? Well, you live with him. So.
Yeah, he's someone, man, that like, again, like coming back to the path as an artist and what it means to like, I don't know, have to figure your shit out and release music and put yourself out there and deal with the whole plethora of emotions that comes with that. He like is just trying to build up that confidence to where he knows his music is where it can be because he's getting so good so fast that it's like every time he makes a song, it's like, shit, this could be better because now I've learned a bunch. And so he'll know when the time is right for him, but he's just kind of being patient and waiting to release music. But when he does, he showed me some of his music that's unreleased. And I'm like, dude, this is fucking ridiculous. Like, get it out there. Like, it's awesome. But he just doesn't think it's quite there yet. But he's going to. He's like this close to releasing a handful of songs that are really awesome, that I'm excited. And my other roommate, Austin Miller, he has probably even less music on SoundCloud, but he goes by Miller Time. And same thing, his music's exponentially getting better. And so he's just kind of waiting for that perfect time, I feel like,
Nice. Well, I think that kind of is a nice, you queued up another question that I've always loved to ask, and that is, how do you know a song is done?
Man, the best saying I've ever heard to go along with that is art is never done. It's just abandoned.
There you go.
But, you could go back to a song and feel like it's never done. And so, again, that becomes a bit of a mental training point. Having to train your mind to say, all right, I have to move on because it's not going to behoove me any longer to put more time into this song or this track, whatever it might be. And so, yeah, there's definitely a bit of that. It's almost like being a addicted gambler, and you have to train yourself when to leave the gambling table when you're up, otherwise you're just going to lose it all no matter what. It's pretty similar.
There you go. Nice. That's a good analogy. So another track, Bells and Whistles.
Hold up.
So there's some piano licks on there, electro bass, and there's a mid-song breakdown that doesn't have any bass, and then I'm pretty sure it's a Dre sample. Hold up.
Yeah, hold up.
And then it drops. So what I want to ask is how do you decide the feel of a song, how it evolves and the structure as a whole?
That is a good question, man. So that one's a collaboration as well with another amazing artist, Patrick Schuyler. Shout out to my boy, Patrick. Man, it happens a lot of ways in the sense that it doesn't always happen the same way. I've had a million tracks where I've started a drum beat first, and then I'll just start adding a bass line, and then I'll just continuously add layers and elements until maybe I have what you would call a drop or something like a drop. And then it becomes reverse engineering from there, trying to, kind of create a mental image in your mind of what type of introduction would lead to this drop or what type of break section might come after this drop. And then you just kind of keep building the pieces from there. Sometimes, though, I might pull in a sample of some ambient noise or something. And in my head, I hear, oh, that could be an introduction. And then it's the reverse process. Okay, I have this introduction, maybe that built up a little bit. What type of drop would this lead to? What elements am I going to use? Something that's always big for me, man, is the more and more I get into production and this type of music, it's all sound design, Are your sounds super crisp and clean? And do they stand out? And are they interesting? And do they complement one another and work well together? And so, when I wasn't as good at designing sounds, it was search through presets until I find sounds that intrigue me, and then maybe try to tweak them to something that's exactly what I like. Or now that I've gotten more familiar with sound design, it's more of that process, trying to picture a sound in your head. Hold on. Let's say hi to the dog real quick. This is Winnie. This is Winnie. Winnie wants attention. Sorry, Winnie. Okay, but yeah, totally interrupted my thought. My bad. Either way, just trying to find, sounds that are interesting, or trying to picture a sound in your head that, trying to picture something before it exists and then being able to create it. That's the game more and more I'm trying to toy with, and it's a challenging one. The best sound designers, that's what they are able to do. They're able to picture some squiggly sound that comes in from the right to left might be perfect here, and are able to manifest that sound through the medium, which is the various DAWs and VST plugin programs that you're using within the DAW. So, yeah, sorry about the dog there.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. So,
Cool,
do you have any go-to or favorite VSTs, plugins, synths?
Yeah,
And if so, what are
they? Yeah, 100%. So for actual like synthesizer VSTs, Serum is a go-to. Everyone loves Serum. But I've been using Operator a lot more recently. Operator is a VST that's within Ableton. Ableton actually made it, I believe. And it's super powerful. It's just not as flashy and user-friendly, I wouldn't say, as Serum. And so maybe people aren't as turned on to use it right away. But if you dive into what it can do, you can do some pretty amazing things with Operator. And then programs stacked on top of those that I've been really loving are Portal. Portal is a program that's made by Output, and it's a granular synthesis program. And so you're just able to get so many unique results by taking a normal bass you would have made in a song, whether it's like a wobble or just like a growly bass, and putting it through Portal. And now you have this cool, almost video game-like interface where you're interacting with the sound and moving around this XY cursor to react to the sound. And so I'll resample that. To anyone that doesn't know, resampling is essentially this re-recording audio and using the re-recorded audio to create more effects or to edit it more. And so you can just resample while using Portal I did it for literally like an hour and a half yesterday. I couldn't stop. It was just like addicted. So another program like Portal is called Stutter Edit. Stutter Edit is made by Isotope, I believe. And I think that's a similar thing. It might just be a granular synthesis VST, or it's definitely just a VST to get some crazy glitch sounds, essentially. But, it has all these presets that you can run it through, and your sound sounds incredibly unique compared to what it did when you started. And like anything, I have recently gotten a few of these programs, but the best people and the best producers out there are becoming masters at designing their own Stutter Edit presets or their own Portal presets and knowing exactly how it manipulates and modulates the sound that they're inputting into the program. So I just find it super interesting. It's just, it really is never ending. And as the technology gets more interesting and complex, the music I find gets more and more interesting and complex. And it's just really cool.
Nice. And so I want to go back to the fact that you teach music.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you teach guitar, piano. Do you teach production?
I do. I've had a couple production students, but I don't do it as much. I would do it more if the opportunity comes my way. My teaching time is fairly limited because I'm just doing so many other things, and I want to leave as much time as humanly possible to work on music too. So that's always a balance between like, do I have enough money, and do I have enough time to work on my art,
Yeah. Well, talk to me a little bit about that. So first of all, did you create that company, that music education?
So I'm a co-owner of Highlands Ranch Music Lessons, but I didn't actually create it. I started working for someone named Chelsea when I first moved to Colorado. Well, not when I first moved here. It was right around when I was going to graduate. So 2014 and 15 is when right around that transition is when I started working for her. And she owned a company. I believe at the time she had a different name for it. I think it was called Chelsea Manning Music Studio, her name. But she ran it out of her house. So she had a couple rooms in the basement, and I was an employee for her, and I taught music lessons, guitar and piano. And it was an awesome opportunity when I first moved here to get students and make some money that was with a job that I loved and was flexible. And that's always been such a joy with teaching music, And for various reasons, she stopped teaching. She wasn't into it for a while and had other things going on in her life. And so she was so kind and kind of coached me into taking over her business, which was essentially largely the website. The website was how we did and still get leads for new students. And we have other marketing techniques as well. But the website was huge. And so I owe so much to her. In her giving me that website, I was able to keep teaching and make a business that was my own and make a living, And I did other jobs along the way for sure to make ends meet. I drove for Lyft and Uber. I drove for, Lyft and Uber. I painted apartments, and so I had little jobs along the way to make it work. But it finally got to the point where I had enough students and word of mouth where I could make a living just teaching. And that was such a huge turning point in my career. Again, just like there's always self-doubt as a musician, like, am I going to be able to figure this out and make a living as a musician, And so that was awesome. And long story short, we've actually teamed up again since me having my own business. And she, wanted to get back into teaching. And we've teamed back up. We've hired 5 or 6 new teachers. And we get them students as well and help fill up their schedules. And so we don't have a brick and mortar store right now. We do home-to-home lessons. So, I'm teaching 4 days a week, going house to house, and a little bit of Zoom lessons as well after COVID. And Chelsea does the same thing. And then we've hired, like I said, 5 or 6 other people doing the same thing as well. So trying to, help educate the next generation of musicians. We're trying to incorporate more and more electronic music and production. My roommate Tyler kills it at that. And we're trying to get him teaching more lessons doing that. And so, yeah, man, it's been really fun. It's been a cool thing to, put time into every day and watch grow gradually and become something that is, a viable option as a musician to make a living.
Yeah, well, that's great. It's like COVID obviously shook up the entire entertainment industry, music for sure. And, I suppose maybe Hollywood was, I would think, less affected because, it's on the screen. But the music industry, as a musician, you have to evolve. And that's so amazing that you're able to create this new platform, or at least build on top of the platform that was already there, and to figure out how to teach musicians. So that's just beautiful. And just want to say, that I really appreciate what you're doing. And I would imagine your students do too. So,
well, thanks, man. Honestly, I really appreciate you saying that. And coming back to what we were talking about earlier, man, with Tony Robbins and trying to find a deeper purpose. At first it was like, wow, I can eat and survive off this. But now I've tried to see the bigger picture. Like, I can really do something that's going to help thousands of musicians down the decades, become the musicians they want to become. And that's something that was always very integral for me. Is I looked up to my teachers and they've helped me get to where I am, all of them. And so, yeah, trying to find that deeper purpose in life. We're all looking for it.
Yeah, that's great. So what do you do when you're sitting down at the computer to make music and you're just not feeling productive, or if you're overwhelmed, your mind's racing, maybe you're, just things are not flowing through the keyboard or guitar or whatever you're trying to do? How do you approach that situation?
Yeah, what I usually do, Michael, is just smoke a big fat bowl of crack, and that's usually it. Totally kidding to any young musicians listening out there. No smoking crack. No, what I do, man, a lot of times I'll just sit down at the piano and I'll just start. I heard this once and it helped me a lot. Just start messing around with the piano. If you're feeling uninspired, you'd be surprised by how just sitting down and playing through a couple arpeggios or scales or playing a few notes will start to spark some inspiration. And so, coming back to sound design and synthesizers, if you start looking through synthesizers, it can be just hearing a cool sound could be something that inspires a whole song idea, or at least an introduction or a drop or something like that. So that's something I'll try to remember. Coming back to the War of Art, Stephen Pressfield, he talks about the pro shows up. And so if I'm not feeling that inspired, I try to force myself sometimes to just get in front of the piano or just get in the studio. And it's amazing sometimes how just showing up can get you going, And so that's something I try to remember, is that even if I try to write something even if I try to write something and it's not my favorite work that I've made or it's not a masterpiece, at least I'm there and I'm there for the next time, when it's, get that moment of true inspiration where you're like, okay, I'm on to something that I find interesting and I find is a breakthrough for me. And so, trying to find that feeling is definitely important. With all these books and trying to be inspired by the best, I think every aspect of your life is interconnected. So I do try to exercise a lot and I try to sleep as regularly as I can and trying to keep all those other ducks in a row as to keep my mind as potentially ready as possible for that moment of inspiration in the studio, I think that's really important. It's amazing how and becoming more and more in tune with that as I get just more aware of it and trying to, to be conscious of how I'm feeling. It's amazing how if the other elements of my life aren't good, whether I'm not sleeping well or maybe I haven't gotten to the gym as much as I want, or maybe I'm partying a little too much, going to music festivals and whatnot, staying up too late. It's amazing how it really affects my ability to want to work on music. So trying to stay in tip-top condition,
Nice. That's a great answer. You did a 180 from your first comment.
I have a bit of an odd sense of humor. Just have to bear with me.
No, it's all good. So speaking of odd sense of humor, I was going to ask, have you been abducted by aliens? You've got all kinds of alien references in your music. You got the singularity, which obviously is like computer. You got the UFO, spaghettification, the black hole, event horizon, necromancer. I actually had to look that one up, but
you were on to me.
I'm curious.
Man. So,
and if so, what did you learn?
It's honestly something that I am tentative talking about sometimes because of not wanting people to think I'm crazy. But again, I'm an open book and I think I'm a good person. So that's what really matters deep down. But, so first of all, let me start with the easier answer. I have not been abducted by aliens formally, but I have seen a couple UFOs and I've always been open-minded to it, but skeptical. But I did see something in Montana once that was unlike anything I've ever seen. And I have looked up some similar stories and I'll just explain to you what I saw. First of all, it was essentially like, when you see a satellite moving across the sky, it was similar to that, but moving a little more sporadically and some zigzagging, but it was way bigger than any satellite I've ever seen. It was looked like a giant orange orb. And I thought it could maybe be a drone or maybe like one of those lanterns that you see people light. They float away in the sky. But it was way too big to be a satellite. And I was looking at it, and then two other people were like, "Are you looking at that UFO?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am. Are you seeing this as well?" I'm not hallucinating this because I was on drugs at the time, full disclosure. But I apparently was not hallucinating this UFO. And then it just shot out of the sky and zoomed away. So that was the first time I ever saw something where I was like, okay, I'm definitely open-minded to that being explainable, but I can't explain that. I have no idea what that was. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. So that's one thing. I have seen a UFO. Now, coming back to the abduction answer.
It's a two-part answer, huh?
It's a two-part answer, man. I have not been abducted by aliens, but I have had moments on DMT. Which, are you familiar with DMT?
I am not.
Okay, so DMT, it's the strongest psychedelic in the world. And so right away you have the stipulation, which again, I'm open-minded to. I'm open-minded to rigorous, skeptical, reductive thinking. But the reductive materialist would say you had a drug experience, you hallucinated, and that was that. There's nothing more that happened. But when you smoke DMT and you blast off, as they call it, and have this experience, you are in the presence of an intelligence that is so foreign and so alien that you may as well. I've heard Joe Rogan say this. If a UFO landed on your front lawn and aliens came out right now, it wouldn't begin to touch how alien of an experience smoking DMT is. And so, okay, maybe it's your brain hallucinating and creating something from your subconscious that you didn't know was there. And somehow you're able to invent the most geometrically beautiful, intricately complex experience that you can. Words are a joke to describe it. It's ineffable. Or maybe it's tapping into something that is beyond our comprehension, which would be something along the lines of alien intelligence. We are still trying to figure out exactly what consciousness is and what this whole human experience really, what's going on behind this whole, this whole sheboing. And I think that when you have a deep experience on DMT like that, it's opening your mind to a deeper level of consciousness that is available and might be underlying everything. I mean, DMT is in your body. It's in almost every plant. It's found in almost everything. And we're only just beginning to understand why these substances exist and why the plants have co-evolved to have these keys, essentially, that unlock this receptor in your mind that is one of the most profound things in the world. So I guess what I'm getting at is that I'm open to people's abduction stories that might be induced by other things other than an alien landed and tractor beamed them up,
Nice. Well, I thought that might have been a fruitful question, so I'm glad I asked it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I hope I gave you some little crazy insight there.
So I want to talk about one more song of yours, Dependent. And it was released, I'll say back in the day, but 2016, that's not that long ago. And there's like some really soulful groove and piano. First of all, are you playing the piano on that track?
Yeah, that is me. And it's so funny. I actually love one of my favorite things about you asking me to do this. Thank you so much, by the way. This has been so fun all around. And one of my favorite things is getting to rethink about all these old songs that I honestly, man, I haven't thought about that song in years. I'm so focused on new music that I'm working on all the time. And, it's cool to I was like, Dependent. He brought up this song. I haven't thought about that song in years, and went back and listened to it. I was like thinking about that. Oh, I did record that piano part. And, I remember being the artist that I was inspired by at the time and whatnot. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask some of the questions that I had in regards to that song are you're playing the bass as well. Is that right? Yes. I see a bass. Oh, no, that's a guitar behind you. But. Yes,
actually, no need to get into it too much. Me and my best friend, Chris, he's the bass player at Mass Relay. Gotcha. He'll be back. We're on a bit of a hiatus right now. Our lives have gone a little bit of different directions for various personal reasons, but we'll bring it back around. I know we will.
Nice.
Yeah. But there is he's some, an amazing bass player.
Underlying alien textures. That's why I wanted to cue it up with the alien question before. But are you using like Massive as a plug-in? Do you use that one?
Yeah, so that song was before I had Serum, and Massive was my go-to for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, is there anything else that you would want to talk about musically before I ask a few kind of closing questions?
Man, basically, I guess one of the main things, if I forget to say it, if you're a musician and you're listening to this, don't ever give up on your music, whatever that might mean. You have to be willing to do other things along the path. The path will unfold as you continue to pursue it. But I think it's so important to pursue your dreams. So even if you're not a musician, I think just as a broad statement, I want everyone in the world to in some way pursue their dreams or whatever their thing is that brings them joy. And that could be being a businessman. That could be, being a janitor and being a good janitor. I had the best janitor in elementary school that would come and play guitar for the kids and was a positive role model for kids. It's all about finding something that truly brings you joy, because I find myself a very happy person. And I've gone through a lot, and I've struggled with depression. Who hasn't? Going through a divorce is not easy, especially when it's someone you love, and it's not meant to be. But life is a very beautiful thing, and I know our country struggles with depression, and just keep trying to find the thing that brings you happiness, because you only get one shot at this, as far as we could tell. And I think it's really important. It's brought me so much joy to pursue music and to get to do what I do and meet the people I meet. And I want other people to get to do that too. So yeah, if I don't get to say that, I definitely want to throw that in there.
Oh, I appreciate that. So if we could just dive into it a little bit, because I think maybe there's something a little bit more under the surface. How did you get yourself out of that depression, and what strategies did you use that were successful in kind of seeing the light, for lack of a better term?
Absolutely. When I was going through the worst times of the divorce, I dealt with drug addiction, and I was at the lowest point of my life for sure. And, it sounds cliche, but people say it all the time. You have to hit rock bottom sometimes to really realize what you do need to do with your life, or maybe to realize what you do have. And so with me, it's always been this balance between God, I realize I have so many good things going on in my life. I have the music project. People are listening, not as many as might someday, but there's people out there listening to my music, and I'm forever grateful for that. And, I have a career in music, and this on paper, all these positive things. But then, I was struggling with the depression, and I was dealing with drug addiction, and I was spending all of my money, and that was causing personal issues. And so it was knowing that I had to do something. And so, man, the books changed my life. Tony Robbins has a book called Awaken the Giant Within. And it was so inspiring, to kind of see where other people have been, one, in your shoes, and two, in way worse shoes than you could possibly imagine in so many areas of the world, that's happening right now. People are just trying to figure out how they're going to survive. And so trying to gain perspective and to focus on the positive things that I do have, and then starting to build on that on a daily basis. Say, okay, I'm not going to call myself a loser or a drug addict or a piece of shit. I'm going to say I'm someone that's briefly struggling with some addiction, and I'm going to get out of it. It's just daily reprogramming of your perspective and your mind. And then once you start to get a little bit of results, whether it's I went on a run this week, or I got to the gym, or I have a little bit of money that I didn't spend on drugs, you start to have these little wins, and that conditions your mind to want more of that. And you are slowly just, reprogramming your mind to want the things that are truly bringing you happiness, and not bringing you brief happiness, but in the long run are very insidious and bringing you deep pain. And so I guess the ultimate thing that I learned from all of my depression and the lowest points of my life was getting to know who I truly am, and being able to manipulate that in a way that's going to be most positive for what I truly want. you know? And I know what I truly want. It's a life in music. And I've always wanted that. That's always been the goal, is to make music and live off of it and to bring joy to other people, like I said earlier, you know, and starting to realize that that's actually doable. That's the deepest high in the world, right? And again, you know, I'm not perfect. I still smoke weed. I drink sometimes, and you know, it
Both
is what
of
it
which
is.
are legal in Colorado.
Well, exactly, man. And with everything with moderation, you know, and I've found a lot more balance in my life. Moving in with my roommates was one of the best decisions I've ever made. They've brought me up so much and kept me on a path to focus on the positive things, and we all help each other. You know, if I get home from work and I'm tired, like you were talking earlier about being a little unmotivated sometimes, but maybe I'll see my roommates working on their music. I'm like, all right, got to get going, got to start working on music. You know, this is what I truly want for my life. And the more and more you do that, it just brings you more and more happiness, you know? And again, I think we're all trying to wiggle our way back to the present moment and find a reason. I've heard Sam Harris say this, I believe, but he talks about we're constantly trying to find reasons to make the present moment good enough. Whether it's a little thing to need to put a sweatshirt on to feel a little warmer, to I need to make sure my bank account has money in it so I can feel comfortable, so I can not spend it, whatever it might be, you know. You were always trying to come back to this present moment. And if you can truly find ways to do that and actually be in the present moment, that's when you start to try and find true joy, I have found.
That's beautiful. And I really appreciate what you're talking about with the mental talk and reframing how you even think about yourself. Even if you're in that, you know, tough area, to reframe it in a way that, hey, this is temporary. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to be greater than I am now, and my trajectory is upwards. And also, I like the idea of, there's a phrase by somebody named Benjamin Hardy, and I think it's Dan Sullivan, but they call it measuring the gain, not the gap. So looking backwards and like, oh yeah, I did graduate high school. I did graduate college. I did do all these things. And even if you're out there listening and you didn't graduate high school or college, there's plenty of other good things that you can look back on your life and realize that you did. But just looking backwards and measuring the gain. So where were you and where are you now? And rather than measuring, why am I not Elon Musk? You know, why, you know.
No, that's so huge, man. It's so perfect that you said that, because again, coming back to the thing I most related to on a day-to-day basis is music. But it's so easy when you're so close to something all the time, you know, whether it's your art or your career, whatever it might be. It's so hard to overlook the big picture and to not take that step back and to give yourself some damn credit for the things that you've accomplished, you know. You're always thinking about, and you know, that's what I was coming back earlier with, this early recognition that being an artist is going to take mental fortitude, because otherwise you can get caught in that mental trap and you're just constantly looking at the next thing right in front of your face rather than taking a minute to breathe and say, God, look at all the awesome things I've done, you know? And it sounds a little self-serving and, you know, like I'm pontificating, like, oh, look at all the amazing things I've done. But again, in a world where, I mean, I think 60,000 people have committed suicide last year or whatever it was, you know, it's something like that. But there's a lot of depression, and we need people to love themselves more, I think. I think self-love, it's been huge for me. Like you said, man, reframing things in your mind to really love yourself, that's been so integral for my life. And I think it can be a huge game changer for other people as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, or you at least implied it. And I'll just go back and circle over the idea again, and that is, it's important what you take in. So if you're just sitting there on Instagram for 12 hours a day scrolling, of course you're going to see somebody else with a car, with a wife, with a life that you don't have. And
right.
There's no point in comparing yourself to anybody else. It's you with you. Like, you better enjoy your own company, because, you know, that's who you're with. Always.
Well, exactly, man. And again, you know, coming back to the divorce I went through, is like, that's something that became very evident to me was, you know, no matter how much you think you have figured out, you never know what might change. You're not other people. You can't decide things for them, but you can control your own mind. And you can always at least count on being there for yourself. So yeah, I think that's huge, man. I love that.
Yeah, and just filtering what information you consume. Like rather than the Instagram feed for 12 hours, grabbing a book that's productive, that's helpful, that reframes and have that growth mindset that you're going to learn something new, you're going to grow as an individual, as a person. So
it's almost instantaneous for me. You know, sometimes, again, life will get busy and I'll get caught up in things and maybe I won't read for a couple weeks in a row. And then as soon as I grab that book full of some positive information, it's an instantaneous change in my mindset. Some people, you know, they'll rip on the self-help book or they don't like that idea. But for me, it's like, yeah, okay, I got the message the first time, but if I come back to something again, it's just like fuel. It's like I'm refueling the tank, the mental tank, you know?
Of course, yeah. Sometimes it sinks in deeper the fifth time you read it. Or
there we go. That's another huge reason too. Yeah, things sink. They do take repetition to sink in. It's not going to sink in as deeply the first time. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So outside of music, what are you into? Obviously, you like to read. Anything else that just gets you lit up?
Yeah, man. I have dreams of like, you know, meeting all the endeavors that I want to meet in the music world and then pursuing like an astrophysics degree. I love astronomy. I watch every episode of The Universe or any documentary about black holes or quantum physics or anything like that. So I'm a huge science nerd. You know, I really love that. So as far as my things I'm really interested in, I mean, here's the thing. Being a musician is amazing, but sometimes I have the thought, I'm like, if I really want the deep answers to the deep questions, you know, philosophy and astronomy and science, that's the path I really should be going down, you know? So I joke in my own mind about that sometimes. But yeah, it's fun also being on the side of that world and just getting to absorb a little bit of it from some of the most intelligent people, whether it be through, you know, a podcast, through Neil deGrasse Tyson, the Star Talk, or a documentary, things like that. I love movies. I've seen thousands of movies and can quote them pretty at will. And so I really love watching movies. You know, when I'm not working on music and trying to just unwind and shut down, I find a movie is a good way to do that because all the information is presented there for you. You know, you're just kind of watching the story, unless it's a mystery and you're trying to figure things out as you go. But, you know, for the most part, there's the information. Your mind gets to absorb it and kind of become part of that story for a brief period of time. And it's an enjoyable experience. So I really love movies. And then my parents, you know, they raised me. I'm from Chicago, but I live here now for 8 years. I love skiing and I love hiking. I don't do as much of it as I would like because I get obsessed about being in the studio and going to shows, and shows are late. So I'm out till 2 or 3 in the morning and I don't go on the hike sometimes. But I really love the outdoors. You know, every time I get a chance to go skiing or get a good hike in and challenge myself, it's that feeling of like, hey, you idiot, you need to get out here and do this more because you love doing this, you know? So I really love doing those things. And then, yeah, I'm really into philosophy and reading and whatnot. I'm a curious young lad, and I always have been. So, you know, just always trying to learn a little bit more about what's going on in the world and my spirituality. And I wasn't raised religious, didn't go to church as a kid, but I find that really worked in my benefit because I'm really curious about all that now. So like with an open mind, I'll read the Bible sometimes. I'll read the Bhagavad Gita. I'm really interested in different religions. And, you know, I'm always, I'm very attuned to this idea that it's all the same thing, you know, coming back to a different way of describing the same thing. We're all trying to come back to the same feeling, which is unconditional love and, you know, beauty. Yeah, man. So those are some of the things I'm really into.
Well, for anybody out there who's listening, who wants to learn more about you, or maybe they're in the local area and would love to learn alongside you or with you or from you, where's the best place for people to connect?
Yeah, absolutely, man. At Mass Relay Music on Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram. Mass Relay on Facebook. Mass Relay is on Spotify and SoundCloud and all the places you can find music. And massrelaymusic.com. I think I'm currently a super poor musician and didn't pay my monthly renewal on that. And so I bet if you went to massrelaymusic.com, you'd be like, what the hell, man? This doesn't work. But that will be up and running as it normally is. And yeah, man, please feel free to reach out to me anytime on Instagram or Facebook. I love hearing from people, love talking to fans, love answering questions about music. And yeah, I really appreciate anyone who happens to hear this and listen to this. I love you. And I love you, Michael. Thank you for asking me to do this, man. I really appreciate it. It was super fun.
Yeah, well, Matthew, thank you so much for sharing your time. It's one thing, obviously, none of us get back. I'm very grateful that you were just such an open book and shared your music with the world, shared your thoughts, and shared your alien experiences. So.
Absolutely. I think the more of us that come out about our alien experiences will realize that we're not alone out there.
You've been listening to the Freio Music Podcast with Michael Morahan. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to share this podcast everywhere. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.
Freio Music, Freio Music, Freio Music, Freio Music. You are listening to Freio Music.